Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another week of The Voice in the Hollow. My name is Miguel Ortega, and this is my co-host Tran. I can't hear you. No,
Can you hear me now?
now I can hear you.
All right.
So how's everybody doing? Shahab is first in the house. How's it going? So what is this thing that you're watching? This is a weekly vlog showing the making of an animated horror African short film done in Unreal.
Super
5.
indie, by the way.
Yeah, this is 80% of the VFX company right here. So, but yeah, so we're doing it all in Unreal 5. Last week we started working on this sequence here, which is one of the small sequences, and we're just going to start with showing like the progress on that. So we have the edit is in place now. The faces are working. The only thing that we need to do now is there's no clothing simulations on anything here. So let's just go through this and I'll show you what we got. So again, this is no clothing sim, temp sound, and there's still some issues with some of the particles, like the fire, like they turn off for one frame on almost every shot. So I need to figure that out as well.
Umemwona Koa ameenda wapi?
Mimi sio mlinzi wa dadangu.
Si uende ukamtafute sasa.
Na Mawindo je?
Ataungana pamoja na sisi.
Mbona? Yeye si chui.
Kamwe usifurahie madhaifu ya dada yako. Umenisikia? Sitakwambia tena.
Sawa.
So that's it. It's a very short scene, 39 seconds long. But from a story point of view, it does a lot for us. You know, this you're seeing this in a vacuum here, but we want to make sure that it's clear that this one is the more badass of the two sisters. You'll know that by this point in the story. She's anxious to go on her first hunt with the crew, which, by the way, that's one thing that is missing here. So when the father comes in, we want other hunters to come into the kind of beach. And you can see there where the fire's turning off for that one frame. We got to figure that out.
There's a lot we have to figure out in rendering.
Yeah.
It's like, why are things doing this?
Yeah, so the other guys would be walking in and you would start seeing them in the background, like prepping the boats or whatever.
Kamwe usifurahie madhaifu ya dada yako. Umenisikia? Sitakwambia tena.
Sawa.
So you would see them there, like readying the boats and whatever. So that's not, we don't have that yet, but we will have that. So a few questions. This content is part of what course? No course. This is just something we're doing online. We do both teach classes at Gnomon, but they're not related to this. I would like to teach a class on this kind of stuff, but I don't. Good quality. Did you use movie queue? Yeah, we just used the default settings on everything. So nothing has been changed. Like whatever the presets are, that's what we're using for now. Because right now, we're not trying to get final quality. We're just trying to get the story in place. Yeah. Do I use mocap to animate the characters? Yes, everything is motion capture. That's on some of our older episodes. We go through that entire process. We even show the motion capture session. All the motion capture is done with an X-Sense suit and one actress doing all the women, and then I do all the men. And then all the faces are motion captured. So all of them are me. I'm doing all the faces.
Ataungana pamoja na
Literally, when he says that, he's doing mocap of his actual face expressions.
So I know how to say all of this dialogue in Swahili. Yeah. But yeah, so this is that sequence. So pretty happy with that. We still got to fine tune some stuff and whatever. Ceremony, we had talked about that already. So I don't know if we had shown this I think we did show this last week. So we wrapped this part up. So this is when she wasn't a part of the tribe.
The streaming looks pixelated. That's okay.
It looks pixelated?
Yeah, when it's streaming, but that's just the stream.
Oh, is that
Yeah, so it doesn't look as sharp. I mean, it'll sharpen up when you hold it.
it looks sharp on my end.
Well, this doesn't on mine.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so that's that. So now we're on to this sequence here. So right now you can see we literally have nothing. So I shouldn't even do that because you won't see anything. But we just have
Baba nakutafuta.
we just have literally just the sound.
Baba nakutafuta. Lazima twende sasa hivi.
Mkaka karibia unichome.
Sasa hivi. Ningetaka kukuchoma, ningekuchoma. Lazima twende.
Ngoja tuone kama utapenda.
Jaribu. Hata ungeanguka kutoka kwenye mti, hungegonga ardhi. Wewe si chui.
All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna pass this on to Tran, and I'll come back here, and I'm gonna just start showing how I piece this together, like literally from nothing. Like, how are we going to put this this into an edit? So I know I have this. This is about the length that I want. It'll probably add a little bit more because once you put images in, you might want to put some more buffers. Yeah, try. And then, but for the most part, you can see everything is done this way, where I'll have the entire feel of it done with just audio and sound effects. So I could also get an idea of the length of the sequence. So that's what we'll do. So another thing, Tran is going to jump in a second, but one of the things that we've been looking at is some of the shots that we did earlier. These are a few of them. When we went back and we look at some of these shots, we feel that the newer stuff we're doing looks much more cinematic. So if you look at a shot like this, which these are like some of our favorite shots, by the way.
Yeah, I actually like that shot.
That one, but like this one, these are like some of the first things we did. We feel like cinematically, the newer stuff we're doing just has a nicer look to it. It feels more filmic. Like these here and all of these ceremony shots, we just really like them. And we want to go back and reevaluate some of this stuff. So we've been just doing like tests to see how we could get the background to look better. And one of the things that we're trying to do is trying to break away from just trying to make this look like a one-to-one version of Africa and just kind of make it a little, however the hell we want to make it. So we were thinking of ways to art direct this more. And I really like the idea of these giant round stones that would just be placed around and having the ground be really red. Now that sounds fantastical, like when you look at this color, but where this tribe in particular is from, they actually do have a red soil where this tribe is inspired from. They do have a red soil, and they use it on their skin because they do not bathe. It's against their culture, but they use this soil to kind of clean their body. So we were like, okay, let's push the red soil and then put like a blue, I don't know, like a calcium or like some sort of weird minerals on the ground to break it up. So I like this look much more than this look.
Yeah, I agree. I hate that shot.
Yeah. And this one, like the camera angle definitely looks better here, but we feel that the colors just are much nicer here. Are they metahumans? No, they're not metahumans. Nothing we do is metahumans. This is all custom.
Well, all the new stuff that MetaHumans came out recently seems really cool, but we didn't have that option.
Yeah, we're not against it. That's not what we did.
Yeah.
Like that whole scan to metahuman, we're very interested in that for our next project. Like, could we transfer a stylized face into metahumans? We'll look into it and see. But anyway, you could see where I like this color palette much more than this one, or at least I feel that it fits our style much more. Because all these other shots I really like. This is another thing that we have to figure out. If you look carefully, there's like a ghost trail that is being left here. You see that right there?
Yeah, it's left behind from the fog. Which,
So I need to figure that out. I thought that maybe if I did the path tracer, it would work, but when you do path tracer, the fog disappears right away, so that's not a solution. So I need to figure that out. I may need to render it twice without the character and with the character, and then just comp them on top, which would be a pain in the ass, but that may have to be a thing. So anyway, that's where we're at. So we're thinking of redoing this environment. Not thinking about it, we are going to redo it. And when we were thinking of how to do the aesthetic, we did end up using some AI, like that Mid-Journey, to try to come up with a look. We wanted to try to take advantage of that. And I'll pass this on to Tran, and she could show you some of the stuff that we did.
let me.
Are the voices ours? No, the voices are all. It's an all African cast from Tanzania. So I wish I knew how to speak fluent Swahili. It'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to speak. I know how to speak all the words from the script because I had to memorize them in order to do the facial motion capture, but I don't really know a lot of it. But yeah, all the cast is in Tanzania. So Tran, you want to show?
Yeah, let me pull. You have the screen. How do I take the screen?
Just take the. There you go.
Okay. Okay, so this is what I have been working on. Well, I did a couple of things. I went back to the previous map where our intro shots are done, and I tried to change the lighting and adjust it and see how to improve it. And I just hate that map. And I made it, so yeah. So then I also don't like the lighting. So I had a lot of issues with the old map in terms of the layout, how it looked, and how the lighting looked. So trying to relight it was just not going to work. So what Miguel and I started doing was we started looking at, just trying to broaden our ideas. So I was just going to pull up something real quick. I'll show some of the concepts that.
Hold on, Rodrigo's asking how many people. It's Tran and I are doing most of it.
Yeah.
And then we have.
We have really talented people helping us.
Yes, so we have a rigger helping us. We have 2 animators in particular that are helping us do all the mocap cleanup, which is Christian Borza and Joey Park, both Gnomon students. One graduated, one is still or just graduated, and the other one graduated last term. So they're helping us.
And then we had Chris, who did all the face.
Chris Boschatnik, he's like the third amigo. He did all the facial blend shapes.
Yeah. So he did all. Yeah. So that's our team, and they're really amazing. But we're doing most of the hours because it's our project.
Yeah.
So that's just how it works.
Wait, so Shahab, you like the newer version better? Do you like the new colors better?
Let me see.
I think the new colors look nicer.
I like it more. Okay. So Miguel has a Midjourney account, which is an AI robot in Discord that produces AI art based on prompts, right? So there were a lot of versions of this where we tried to do like an African landscape and having these type of trees. And I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it so much. The ones that I like more are this one here, where we started getting this red earth, and that started looking more exciting. It's also really, really dark, so can be really tricky to light a character in a scene like this because they would just be like pitch black. And then he started exploring all this other stuff, and then we
In
thought,
particular, the round giant boulders. I like
Yes.
that a lot.
so we kind of like this aesthetic, and I really like this red earth. And when we started getting the shots in for the beach scene, there's a lot of the palette is really green and red, and we started really liking that palette. And also like just a deep red. It doesn't really feel oversaturated in the atmospheric sky. And then of course we have the 2 moons in there. So what I then did, let me just load up the sequence.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Here, let's give you a plug so people could look at your stuff too.
Hold on, it takes a moment. I think it's going to crash. Let me just show you. Sorry, these sequences take a moment to load up because Alembics are super, super slow in Unreal. They pretty much just tank the environment. So you see this shot here. Give me 1 second. It's all loading.
So yeah, one thing you'll notice in the wide shot is
I kind of reframed this one. Here we are.
What was I going to say? That we wanted to still keep a bunch of stuff where if you remove the color palette, like the red, you see like the trees are still they're all African trees. Everything is actually stuff that could exist on Earth. It's not like we didn't want to push it and turn it alien, but we wanted it to feel more fantastical.
Yeah, so these are just some frames. They're not really actual shots, but they're just helping me look around the environment. So you can see what it looks like. We still have trees, right? Just trying to bring it a little bit more realistic. And again, these are just random angles that I'm using to help me set dress this environment as we're going. Let's see, that one's not really great. Here's another random one. Probably gonna pass off this stuff to Miguel because we tend to tag team our environments. But you can see here in this wider shot that we do have like these taller trees. And I don't know. Yeah, this is just what we have. Now, as far as trees, like I had already made a bunch of trees in the beginning. And I decided not to use them. Basically decided not to use anything that I made. Let me turn off this post-process. In the beginning, I kind of hated all that stuff. So what I did is I went to SpeedTree website, and none of the trees are supposed to be close up anyway, because tend to have more issues. But if you go onto their site, you can see there's all kinds of different trees here, and I just purchased some. So here's one of them. I think generally they look actually quite good, right? They're made by some artists, you know, in a procedure program. And when you look at them far away, they look really nice. Their only issue is that they don't hold up well when you get close to them. You can see the textures looked really, really stretched out like this. But I don't want to have them close up. We don't plan to have any close tree shots. So it's fine. Now you can actually export. I mean, I'll go over this at least. you can export this into Unreal. Now you do need the SpeedTree version, the Unreal version. This one's Unreal 4, but it still works fine for Unreal 5. So if I have this tree that I like, what I can do is just export to Unreal like this. I'll just do a new folder. And I'll just save this, right? Now, if you actually want Win, let me change my, you want to activate it first. Just give it a second. I don't plan to have Win, but I think this is interesting. And I can control my wind strength over here. This blue bar is the gust strength. This is just the regular strength of the wind. And it takes a moment to actually hit the cycle. So when you actually make the adjustments of the wind strength, it'll take a second. Now I'll just disable it. It still has the wind. We're just not previewing it. And when I export to Unreal, under the export options, I just pretty much set it to everything default. Just say OK. And this could take a second. Now I've already exported that, so we don't have to wait. Let me come over here, and I'll just create a demo folder. It's actually pretty easy how it exports. It does a couple things. It will pack your textures. So let me show you what that means. So when I purchased the tree, I unzipped this folder, and this is what I got. And if you take a look at these textures, they're all individual, like this, right? So I'll have individual leaves, things like that. Let me pull up a different one. That kind of is a little bit better. Let's look at this one here. Okay, so I'll have like 2 sets of leaves or something like this, and you can end up with a ton of different textures. What the Unreal thing will do versus like regular SpeedTree is it will pack it together. So you end up with something like this, where originally they were just separate pieces. Okay, and then you'll end up with an ST file like this, and all you have to do is drag and drop it. I've turned on create materials, include subsurface, include vertex processing. The vertex processing will actually give you the win if that's what you want. So you want to check that on. And just give it a second while it imports. What configuration am I using for machine? I do have an RTX 3090. As far as what's modeled, we are using a lot of Megascans stuff and modifying it. The characters are not anything Megascans; they're all original because they're characters. Trees, we're not really using any Megascan assets for that. Now,
The other thing we're doing a lot is we're almost treating Megascans like Home Depot, where we're going in and getting like planks of wood and building like bridges and whatever from the pieces of wood. So it looks nothing like a Megascan piece, but since it's all just very simple stuff, you could just build it with the pieces that Megascan gives you.
yeah, so we're kind of like modifying all Megascan stuff and treating it like Lego blocks.
Yeah.
So anyway, this will import like this. I didn't like any of their materials. I like to set them up myself. Now, when I actually drop a tree in here, so these are already imported and they've been replaced. I can place this in here. Let me get out of this. Okay. What you can do once you have this is if you want win, you actually have to create an actor that's a wind controller. So if I go to this tab, I go to all classes. I created a wind directional source. If you don't have this, none of the wind will work. Now the wind, it looks really weird. I don't want to deal with it or troubleshoot it. I don't think it's really critical. I already have a wind controller right here. It's set to 0. And let me just increase the strength. And it takes a second. So it's really weird. There you go. That's what the wind looks like. It just looks like it's blurring out like this. It works. Does it look good? No. But you know,
Does it render like that, you think? I wonder.
I think so. Right. I try turning off, like, is it the fog? Because sometimes the fog. No. I don't know. I mean, you get up close to it enough that it's kind of okay.
Zoom out all the way. Let's see.
Anyway. Yeah, so I don't want to use the wind. I have it in there though. Let's just turn it off. It'll take a second. All right. It's still going. It's weird. Let's shut this down. Nope, it's not doing it. Okay, so I'm just gonna get rid of the tree. But anyway, it's actually pretty amazing. I do like this export. Normally exporting and importing into Unreal is like, for custom made assets, take a very, very long time. And I'm not really getting that in this case. So that's kind of it. And then here, what I have going on with the soil, which looks really neat, is these are just a bunch of decals. So these are decal actors with bounding boxes like this. So they're very simple. They just really contribute into the color. And again, decals are just controlled through a material right here. So this is my instance material. And I have a pattern here. And these were all just pulled off images from the internet that are just like paint swirls. And I just set them to black and white, right? And I gave them kind of a fade around so that they don't have a harsh transition and look really nasty. I can color it here. If we look at the master material, which I'll show, it's very simple. You just create a standard material, and under your material domain, you want to set it to deferred decal. You do have to change your mode because by default, opaque will only give you world offset, which doesn't give you control for anything else. So the blend mode, you want to set it to translucent, which then gives you all these other controls. I just have a color, and I've converted to parameters so that I can control in the instance. And then I have the parameter for the texture, and just a way to multiply and contrast it so I can just control how strong it is inside the instance material. I don't want to apply that. And that's about it. And then these rocks were actually based on Megascan rocks. Lemmics always look squish when you don't, until you actually, yeah, when they're not in the shot. But they're all based on Megascan rocks. What I did for these rocks was I basically downloaded the highest version from Megascans, which took a while. Download kept disconnecting. Brought them into ZBrush and just made them round. Just pulled them until they became round shapes, and then decimated them and imported them, which takes a very, very long time to actually import and convert that all to nanite. So everything here is nanite.
I like those dead roots on the left.
Yeah, so this was actually a SpeedTree piece. Now it has a great shape. It doesn't have good textures. I think that a lot of the SpeedTree trees actually are really well made and they look great. They just have bad textures.
Can you just triplanar that thing?
You could. I could just replace it too with a Megascan. I mean, it's pretty easy. If you go into Megascans, they have way better textures. So if you're thinking about the SpeedTree asset, I think the number one thing a lot of people don't really like about them is they don't hold up well, but they really are more of a textural problem, right? So again, just not really great texture resolution. So you can just simply replace it with the Megascan ones, which are really, really good because they're real scan data from real sources, right? They look fantastic. So yeah, that is what I managed to get done. And now I am going to do a little bit more stuff and then pass on to Miguel. The one thing that, was kind of fun was just interpreting the concept art. Like, if we look at this, there's kind of like blue little areas. And we kind of interpret them, I interpret them as puddles. Miguel interpret them as kind of like deposits. And, if you look at some references I have here, you might think that it looks really alien, but this is like real, right? So this is somewhere where these are clay being mined, dug up. And then you can see that you do have different colored dirt. Dirt is not really just one solid color. You do have patterns. So it's all based on, something realistic. Even when I did the puddles, I always get reference for everything. And then these are just early progressions that I did.
Yes.
It was very intimidating. When I start, it's just like, okay, I have a character and some lighting. And then eventually we'll
zoom into that. Yeah, but I do think that looks much prettier.
Yes, especially if you compare it to the old one. And a lot of these shots are tighter shots anyway. I think the wide shots don't really, when I move around in these wider angles, they don't really look so amazing. But for wide shot to look very good,
you have to set dress it.
You have to set dress it. I don't have the edit. And that's where Miguel and I have to work together, right? I pass things off to him. He sees what's wrong with it, what doesn't look good, and he'll fix it, because there's two eyes on this, right? And when you stare at something for a long time, there's definitely fatigue.
Yeah, and in terms of us doing like an entire sequence and then going back in and redoing it, that's totally normal for us. We do that all the time. We did that on the Ningyo at least twice. We did that on the Green Ruby Pumpkin as well. We do that for everything.
I see a comment here. For a tree motion, try post-processing effect. Maybe you can help you in adjustment some part in real time. Yeah, I mean, I can look into it. It's not a priority though. The thing is like, Miguel and I have such limited manpower that to try to go in and solve something, it takes time. And then you really have to sit there and think about, is this worth it? Do we really want it? Do I want to figure this out? Because that could be like a multiple day thing. And then realizing that we don't need it, and then we just threw away days.
Well, like the virtual texturing thing that happened this week.
Yes. So I went into this thing with virtual runtime virtual textures for landscapes, which would allow you to actually blend pieces of geometry into a landscape actor from Unreal, and it was not worth it. I will just tell you, it was not worth it at all. It looks really cool. It might work for a really small environment, but if you use runtime virtual textures, it affects the rest of the resolution of your textures in the scene. So all of a sudden, our characters start looking really soft and pixelated in the textures, and I ended up deleting it, and that ate up a lot of time. This is going into the ground. Anyway, I do recommend the SpeedTree thing. I just think you can purchase them, and if you want to up-res them, it's not really that hard. You can replace the textures pretty easily. SpeedTree is a modeler, meaning you can model and modify things and replace the textures. And generally, they're pretty good far away. And I think most hero trees take way more work. If you want to make a realistic tree that you can walk right up to and feel that it looks great, you probably just want to scan the tree. And even SpeedTree will have tools for things like that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So, anything else?
no, I mean let's see some of the questions. Thank you for the tutorial. Thank you for watching. And this is super cool. Can't wait to enroll. Yes, Gnomon's a fantastic school. Amazing. Hey, Ingrid.
She's so funny.
Yeah. Did we use Quixels? Quixel. Yes, we did. We use, if you mean like Quixel Mixer, we did for like floor pieces. In this piece, in particular, in this environment, no. But we use it a lot for other stuff.
We have it for one shot, the anteater.
Yeah, we use it for multiple shots. We use it for the ceremony, the main floor. It's really amazing. We use it a lot for creating custom ground, but this one doesn't have any custom ground. But all these are Megascan assets, and all I did was color correct them to be more pink or more red. Anyway, you want to take over?
Yeah, I need a second though.
Okay. Let's see. If I can show. Anyway, I think these look better. The comparison that Miguel was showing, this is Koa, right? The Koa shot I thought was one of the worst shots. And then we did a comparison of one of the best shots, which I don't have this to pull up, but he can show it in a second.
Which, by the way, when we say we're going to redo everything, it's not going to take us that long because we're not going to change the animation or the clothing simulation. It's just the great thing about Unreal is that you could do this and it's not catastrophic. If you wanted to do this and you were doing like traditional rendering, it would end you.
Yeah. So we did it when we did this. We picked these two shots in particular. One was one of the worst looking shots that we felt in our earlier versions, and one was the comparison to one of the best looking shots. So that's our thought process on this stuff, and it's kind of normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really normal for us to kind of redo stuff. I mean, if you work at a company, I've worked on shows where there's 100 iterations on lighting. So Miguel and I usually have one or two iterations, and to redo something is not really a bad thing. So
here, let's put them in order here. So this is the newer one. The animation has a weird little thing at the end there where it stops. This is the old one. I definitely like the new one better. This camera angle is not correct, but the colors, I like that much more than that. I like this one though. Like this was a shot that we liked.
Yeah.
But I think these colors are much.
Yeah. So this was the comparison
bolder
of the worst shot in the old one and the best shot of the old one.
Of the exteriors.
Yeah, of the exteriors.
Yeah. So.
As far as how we feel, we're still uncertain about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm more sold on it.
May I ask for sky, what are we using for the sky? You're lighting that one, so you should explain that.
It's just an HDR. So
do you want to show the two post-process thing?
Yeah. So let me pull the screen back. Okay. And let me just show how this is split. Give me 1 second. When I load the sequence, it takes a second. I would say Alembics are really, really, really freaking slow in Unreal. They have added a huge like choke time for us. Let me go over here.
Yeah, it's very weird how slow they are.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I have going on in lighting. Let me just go to the first shot over here. Lighting is pretty basic. I have post-process, and I have 3 of them, and I'll show them in a second. Basically, in the lighting is pretty simple. I have an HDRI backdrop, right? If we turn off the fog, let's get out of this real quick. So it's just some sky, and I had multiple skies and ended up with this one that I liked. And then I had a directional light that just kind of matches the source of the HDRI, right? The direction. And then I just have fog. So let me jump back in here. Okay. Now with the fog, I did do one thing. Let's turn on the exponential. And let me go back to fog, sorry. I have post-process. In the post-process, what I have going on, I'm under exposure. I have set it to manual. And I have exposure compensation. And that's really changing it, the lighting the most. And it's actually pretty simple. I have some saturation bumped up, so 1.1. And then the other thing in the color correction that we have been doing overall is in the shadows of the post-process, we have a color offset where this number might be too small, but it's 0.01 red value and the green 0 and the blue 0. So we are very slightly lifting the red shadow. So if you take a look here in kind of the shadow areas, we have red tint, and that is going on in all of our shots. So all our color corrections have this subtle style. So it's pretty simple what the post-process is doing. It's mostly driven with the exposure to correct it. The one thing I am doing with the height fog here, and I think I have to jump to another shot for you to see this. Let's jump over here. Is that, it's pretty standard. I have volumetric fog on. Most of it is default. The exception is actually the in-scattering fog color. So by default, this is actually black. And what I noticed that was happening with the skyline is that it was just getting really dark, which looks really weird, right? So what I did was I actually put a value into it. It doesn't really change the lighting too much. It just changes the fog and it gives it that lighter value. All this stuff is just kind of fake. It's not really realistic fog. Now, the other thing that's happening is if you look at, let's say I jump out of the camera and this is not inside a camera, this is a super, super wide lens I'm looking at. So obviously the way fog works is in the distance you have more fog, and anything closer up, it becomes clear, right? That's just how fog works. But a lot of the shots that we are doing have a longer lens. So our field of view generally is at least 50 and larger for this. So whenever you're
Focal
using,
length.
huh?
Focal.
Yeah.
That's the other view.
Okay, focal length, sorry. Thanks for the correction. So when we're using these longer lenses, we're most of the other terrain. So where you would see it more saturated, it's just being cropped out. So then the further I get away from anything, the more washed out it looks. So if you see a close-up shot like this, you can see it feels more saturated. And as I get wider, right, so we jump to a medium, like this one, we start to actually lose the saturation. And that just has to do with the lens. So if I were to come into this lens here and make this a wider lens, it would start to feel more saturated just because I am wider. So what I'm doing to actually compensate for this is I am doing multiple post processes, right? So I have one that kind of works better for a mid shot for, like, say, Ala. And what this one does is pretty much the same. So I duplicated it, and it just has a gamma on it, right? And then as I get wider, say in a shot like this here, I have one for wide shot, and it's just kind of pushing the gamma and some of the contrast a little bit. So it probably looks something like this. And it doesn't really work well for something tight. You see, it looks very crunchy. But it looks pretty good for something further. It's bringing some of the color back. Let's see. Again, none of these are final shots. They are just angles that I use to actually set dress. So something like this. Anyway, you ready? You want to take over?
Yeah.
Well, there's a question. The new color is working much better. I'm glad you think so.
We think so too.
For a complex thing like this, would it be best to render it? Would it be best to render it in Unreal rather than Maya, Arnold?
It's up to you. We're doing all our thing in Unreal, but this would only look better if it was done in V-Ray or Arnold.
Well, it would
just
be
take forever.
It would be really hard to lay out for me to lay out this environment inside of Maya is always really tough because Maya is just not that powerful. You would have to use proxies.
No. It's super powerful.
I don't
It's
think
super slow.
It's super slow. I don't think it's as powerful as in the draw call and stuff like that.
No. I know you're right, but I think it's got a lot of power. It's just power makes it seem like it can't do it. It can do it. It just
I don't think it's not as powerful because, like, if you try to bring in like any single one of these meshes could be like a million polys. Like I know this here is 1 million poly, right?
Yeah.
And if I bring in 10 of these in Maya, that's it. That's all it could take.
Yeah.
You would have to. It's hard working in it because you'd have to proxy it.
Yeah.
So a proxy would be like a lower representation of the actual object, and we would use. That's not built into Maya for us. We'd use something like V-Ray, and you'd have to export a proxy. And then when you're looking at your scene, you just have a box. So you'd just be staring at a bounding box or like a really low, super low, crappy version.
Yeah.
I suffer doing environments in Maya. I feel like it's very slow. I don't really know what anything looks like until you hit render. And then the rendering would be very slow because rendering is slower. None of it is real time. I hate it. So anyway.
I think even if you had a render farm, it's not going to match the speed of Unreal.
Yeah. There are funny things like lights disappearing, fog disappearing. But overall, I still really love it.
So, okay. So do you want me to take over?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to start figuring out these shots for what's one of our last sequences here, which is when our girl Koa comes back to the pit, to our hole from the hollow, basically, hence the voice in the hollow, and just inspects it. So how are we going to lay this out? So this is the raw motion capture. It has not been cleaned up yet. This was recorded at Gnomon. Okay. So right now, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to do the cameras for this. And it seems like it's going to be kind of tough because I want her. Obviously, when we're motion capture this, we don't have this giant hole. So the tough thing is, I like this here. I like her looking this way. I like that right there. So I'm going to start kind of blocking out some of the cameras. So something like this. Probably go kind of like push in or maybe a push out. Let's take a look and see. The problem is I wish she was looking at us right here, and we could fix that with the motion capture. You could go in and adjust that, just her head rotation, because I like her head looking this way. You can see that most of the time she's not looking that way. Actually, considering how little she's looking, I should just rotate her. So I could just grab my kind of global control here. And I'm going to rotate. Rotate this around like so. So you can see it's choking up. So let's just delete these keys here. Let's delete these keys here. So let's go to this here. So this hole totally lines up with the hole that we have in Unreal, but I usually like to just set up my cameras in Maya. I still struggle with navigation in Unreal. As much as I love it, there's still certain things about it that I think drive Tran and I crazy. And
Yeah,
I
like
think
navigation is like
90% of it is navigation.
just trying to rotate around it's really difficult.
Especially when you're dealing with Alembic files. It's just pivot. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's take a look.
Yeah, I think Alembics, well, they are newer. It's very a film thing, and I don't think that they are very streamlined yet. So,
Yeah. So I do like this kind of looking down. So let's. And this is very much influenced by the Sarlacc pit, obviously. So let's do. What I'll probably do. So let me see. My 180 is here. So I'm just gonna find a few angles that I like, and I'll just render the whole thing out and then edit it. So let's go to View, select Camera, and I'm gonna save this camera position here. I'm going to close Premiere because my machine is like dying. Okay. So kind of like that. So let's find another angle here. The one thing I'm very conscious of is I know that if I get my focal length above 50, that I'm going to get a more shallow depth of field. More shallow, meaning more like, it's a very misused term, but like more depth. What a lot of people say as more depth of field is actually incorrect. More depth of field means everything is in focus, but everyone uses that term to refer to it being more blurry. So, but anyway, the point is, if I go above 50, I'll get a more blurry depth of field, which I like that. But sometimes you have to be careful because you could just blur the background that you want to showcase. My God, my machine is just dying.
So it's taking a crap.
It's just going unbearably slow, like unworkable. And, you know, that just comes to show you, like, this is 3 models in Maya, going into what Tran was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And it's just dying. It's absolutely dying. And
Yeah. So we still have to do stuff in Maya, like blocking out animation. That's not doesn't feel easy, like to do that at all inside of Unreal. So we have to have lower versions of the mesh whenever we do that. And you can see that's a very, very low res mesh right there.
yeah. So what I'll probably do with a shot like this is I'll start. So I would love it if she were to walk into frame, but I don't have a lot of distance for walking. So what I might do to push that is I might start here. View, select camera. Just add a keyframe. Oh my God.
Do you have Unreal open?
No, I don't have anything open.
Oh, okay. That's just Maya. Yeah, you have like nothing open.
I have nothing open. And then just zoom out, revealing her. In the shot. And then she could take one last step in. Let's actually get rid of that. Okay, so we could go from that to this one here. You can see her mouth is doing all kinds of weird stuff. That has to do with the default mocap file that I have on the model. So let me get rid of that so that she doesn't look like she's making funny faces.
That's the one where she's like shocked.
Yeah.
Or
Well, it's one that we did just to make sure that everything works. So we pushed the expressions there. So she's more neutral. Okay, so that's fine. Let's create another camera here. Select the head here. So view camera settings resolution. So you can see shoulders are busted.
Yeah, they're super busted. Takes a while to shop model, fix all that stuff.
So I might go with something like this. And for a shot like this, I do want to have more depth, a more blurry depth of field. So I'm going to go with 80 is my, yeah, I'm going to go to 80. Something like this. I know I need to show the ground here though. So I have to do something more like this. So this is an 80 focal length, which means you're zooming in quite a bit. Ooh. Okay. And she picks up a rock and she tosses it. Okay. For that, we might cut back to this shot here where you would see the rock falling. Or I might create a completely different camera. And let's try like a 15 millimeter so that we really feel like we're far away. So let's turn on our resolution gate. Let's maintain our 180. So let's save that position. Okay, and now you're going to have a spear is going to land right next to her from her sister. And this is where we have our confrontation. Spear lands. Boom. She's scared. So we could have a cylinder right here. So we'll have this thing land. You know what's crazy is I restarted the computer before the stream. I was like, okay, I got to make sure that this thing doesn't slow down. So there's like nothing.
You just have Maya open and it's like that.
Yeah. So the spiral lands right there. So let's put this guy over here somewhere for now. And then it hits right. Oh my Lord. Right there. Right there. Bam. Oh my Lord. This is like torture. This does not move this slow normally. This is next level slow. I'm not sure why it's going so crazy.
Well, you're also streaming.
No, but this is crazy.
Is it the mocap data?
No, it's already baked in. It's like, look at this rotation. Like, this is yeah, I don't know if I could I could keep showing this. This is just crazy. Okay, so let's try to. Yeah, I can't show this like this.
So what do you want to do?
I'm not sure. But this is just going crazy slow. Like, look at this. Like, look at navigation. Like, I move it, and now I gotta wait. All right, we'll try. Do not get an Apple if you want to do Maya. That's the worst thing you could do
I don't think Apple is good for any kind of
for
CG.
any kind of CG.
I don't know if, like, right now Unreal 5 is using DirectX 12, and I read in a forum, maybe it's changed, but I read this like a month ago or 2 months ago, that Apple doesn't support DirectX 12. So if you're trying to use Nanite, you need to use DirectX 12.
Yeah,
So you would just be not able to do all the new awesome features.
Apple's great for phones and for grandmas, but you do not want to get an Apple if you want to do serious
Serious effects.
graphics. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a myth from the 90s that Mac is for graphic design and stuff like that. It's not. I think I never believed that. Like, when I look back at it, there literally is, there was nothing in it that made it more graphic design friendly, unless you thought that graphic designers didn't know how to use file management. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I like the interface. I
Yeah,
like
it's-
how everything looks and it's streamlined. But it's not for this type of work.
yeah. Macs are for you to give to your mom so she doesn't keep getting computer viruses, which is literally what I did last week. Like, literally. Bought my mom a computer just so she'd stop getting viruses. It was a Mac. Yeah.
I definitely don't recommend it. Like, if you're gonna plan to go to school and you want to use like a lot of the software, like Substance Painter, Mari, like all the texturing programs, they're really heavy on your GPU, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're totally right. I can't keep showing this.
All right. So what do you?
This is not, like, it's just completely insane. I don't know why it's going this insanely slow. But it's unworkable.
So then, what do you want to do?
I don't know.
As far as for things to me to do, I don't have, I could do shot modeling, things like that, but I don't have the Olympics.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but like, look at this. It's like I can't even rotate this. I mean, I could give you one of the Alembic files if you want.
Yeah, pass me an Alembic.
Yeah, guys. So hold on a minute. We need to figure out what we're gonna do because this is just not working. This is just literally gonna.
You're just gonna watch
just-
Miguel rotate like 2 inches.
Yeah. This is just insane. I don't know why it's going this slow. This is something I could show you guys. Let me show something. Okay. This is just completely bananas. Hold on, like I just gotta just force this to shut down. Okay. Just give me 1 second.
Do you want to pass me an Alembic or you want to do something else?
I'm gonna show something else.
Okay.
Even if I were to get you an Alembic, it would take me a long time to get it to you. So, okay. All right. So this is something else that we've been using quite a bit. You can see Maya struggling to rotate a grid. There we go. There we go. Keep in mind, I have 64 gigs of RAM. I have a pretty good graphics card. There's something is funky here. So, okay. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to put a couple of cylinders here. Just do that. And I'll just go to View, Camera Settings, Resolution Gate. Create something like this. So one of the things we've been using is this plugin for your iPhone. That's where you want a Mac or an iPhone. Sorry, a Mac product is an iPhone. That's really cool. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to kind of lay out this thing. And let's just pretend that this is a village or whatever. And I'll set up the amount of keyframes that I want for the shot. And I'm going to come over here and open up this tool called Virtual Camera for Maya. Okay. And this kind of connects with what I was doing a little bit earlier, just setting up cameras. But I could go to start serving and you could see that I get this QR code. Okay. So now I could come over here on my iPhone and open up Virtual Camera. And there's a setting in here that says scan QR code. I'm going to get my phone up to my screen. It immediately detects that QR code, and then it gives you a list here. You can see it has the name of all the cameras in my scene. So let me see if I can make this larger here. You can see it says pick camera perspective. Okay. All right. So I select that camera. Let's go to done. And I'm going to be able to press this button to link my phone with Maya. So I'm just going to move this around. Okay, it's linked. And now you can see that whatever I do with my phone is being transferred over to Maya. So I could control, let me brighten this up a little bit. I could brighten up, give me 1 second. When I went to brighten my screen, it unlinked it. Okay, so I could control the smoothness. So you can see now it looks a lot smoother, less noise. I could do that. You can see it's picking up every little jerky movement. It's like perfect. I'm going to bring up the smooth a little bit. And then you also have the position scale. So you can see that I can make the movements bigger or smaller. Okay. So I could do something like this. And now I could just press record. And I'm going to see a 3, 2, 1. Do something like that. Move my camera around, down, whatever. And it's done. Now, if I come over here, you could see that there's a keyframe for every frame of my Maya. And I could now, it's baked in there. So now I have this handheld camera movement inside of the camera. Now you don't need the plug-in at all. You could just turn it off for all you care, right? You could go in here, Windows Animation Editors, Graph Editors. Here's all your keys. If you wanted to make any sort of changes, you could go to Curves, Simplify Curves. You can see now it's much more manageable. So it's not a keyframe on every single frame. And you still have, for the most part, that kind of handheld feel. So really kick-ass tool. Highly recommend it. And I think it's only like $10 or something. So so yeah, I really recommend this tool, especially if you're setting up camera stuff. So you can also move. So right now you could I could get up and walk around. So it's not just rotations. It could be translations. It could be anything. So yeah. So that's that. So yeah, I think we're going to pass this to Tran. Tran is going to show some shot modeling on something with, what would you show with with mush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll show this here. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen.
In the meantime, I'll try to figure out why my Maya was dying.
I would like to have the source file of this animation.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at this shot, this is what it looks like. So here's the performance. So this is the Aloe shot. Aloe is our character. So I was looking at it and some things still really bother me. So I'm going to end up revisiting it. This shot is a huge pain to shot model, just so you can see where I'm spending a lot of my time is just correcting this stuff. So if you look over at the shoulders, pay attention to this one right here. It will crunch up and pop and collapse. And I struggle with this a lot. And also just the placement. It's inside the torso. So this takes a long time. So a shot like this can take me like the entire day to actually correct. As far as how I do it, it will be multiple passes.
Some people that don't know what you're talking about at all, what
shot modeling is sculpting it to correct it. So this is exported Alembic file, right? So the Alembic file has no rig in it. Everything has been baked down. So the rig has been baked and the animation has been baked. So you end up with a geometry that has all this information, right? And then what I do, whatever can't be corrected in the rig has to be corrected manually just by sculpting on top of it, right? So you can clean stuff up in the rig, you can clean stuff up in the animation. Now this is what I have to deal with in terms of cleaning it up. It has to be fixed. So shot modeling has a couple of things that I usually address. One is I'm concerned about the cloth sim. So if you have clothing, which in this case we don't, but if you had clothing, some kind of underwear, let me just pull up the pen, for example. It's over here, just so you can see what I'm thinking. You have interpenetrating geometry in here. So if you're cloth simulating something, and then all of a sudden the geometry is crashing into each other like this, your clothing is going to explode or it's going to shimmer. The worst thing it does is explode. Like literally, that means the vertices will just shoot out all over the place because it has no idea what to do for the cloth. The other thing is just aesthetics, right? So it just looks not good. Like you can't have this type of deformation in the shot, and it has to be sculpted. And it takes a long time because you're not sculpting on one frame. So if I was just coming in and correcting, it would be easy, but it's not because, this is, let's see, 200 to 150, so 150 frames. So it's like sculpting 150 frames. And the more changes you have on something, the harder it is to do because it's just moving around so much. So normally with something like this, I usually start at the beginning of the animation. So let's just take a look at this arm. And what I'm going to do is create a layer. I'm going to press the sculpt button. It will now produce a layer. And you can see over here, it produce a key point, right? So I can actually key this. But let me show you what that actually means. Now, the first thing, sorry. This disappeared. Give me 1 second. I don't know why it disappeared. Let me just do a new scene. Here we are. The first thing I'll do when I look at the problem is, okay, the arm is inside. Now, if I try to move everything, it's going to pull, this is my move brush. It's going to pull all the ears. So you can see I don't want that. So what I'll do is try to mask out certain areas. Now, masking would be easier. For example, if I go into this pose, so if I start with this pose, it might be tricky for me to kind of get underneath. So usually I'll scrub through the animation. And everything I paint blue will not be affected. This way I don't end up correcting areas I don't want to correct. And I usually break it down into limbs. Right, so I'll do one arm or one shoulder at a time. Depends how big the problem is. This one's a super problematic one. And it sucks to kind of do this again. But I think it has problems that annoy me. And again, this will take me the entire day to do this. Okay, now once everything is masked out there, I think I'm okay with the sphere. I'm probably not going to end up pulling it. I'll go back to the move brush and look at the shoulder, and I know it shouldn't be here. It should be coming out here just naturally if that's where my rib cage is. So I'm just going to pull it. And it is like this. It's like super, super manual. And you can see why this takes a long time. Okay. And this is really normal for us. For as long as I've worked, I've always had to shop model on our own stuff and professionally in every company. Okay, so this one here will take care of the movement. So I renamed this like, this is the right shoulder. Now I have this frame, this keyframe. I can place another one, say here, and you see I can actually control at what point I don't really want this to be inside anymore. And I don't really know until I actually scrub through this. So once it hits this pose, this movement doesn't really work. So the shoulder actually looks like it's in the correct place at this frame. And then I have this curve, right, that controls the blend, and I can place key points. And I'm just holding shift click, and I can control click to delete it. So now I'll just kind of move this back over here. And I think this move is good. So this will be this layer that takes care of that. Then what I'll do is want to actually correct this sculpt. Now, when it's actually torn inside like this, it's just a mess. You can see this inside should not be like that. What I can do is create a relax. So now I have a relax, and it's going to relax whatever I mask. It would be too difficult to just try to sculpt it right away. So I'm just going to relax this region. Now it's not relaxed yet. I can place iterations in here. So let's say I enter value 5. It's going to relax like 5 times. And that actually kind of removes some of the inner penetration, but you can see here the geometry is doing this, which is just really sucks. I can enter value of 10, and that actually kind of pulls it out. It is smoothing it up to so much, but I think in this case, I kind of need to pull it as best as I can. And relax is just going to get me into this point. Maybe at 10, it's the best. Okay, so that will be just for this one here. And then I will scrub through the animation to see how much I want this relax to be. And I can also just judge it. So once it hits this pose or this keyframe, I don't really want to relax it. I could probably correct it some other way. So I'm just going to place a keyframe here. And I don't think I need to relax here. I think that's fine. So I'm place a frame. I do want it here, so let's place it here. And I want it here. And I can get rid of these frames. I don't need those in between. Well, I actually don't want it here. Let's place it here. Yeah. And you can see it turns into this little worm. I'll come back here after relaxing it. Place another sculpt layer. And this one, I will actually try to correct it. The tool I use most is the move tool rather than sculpting. And again, I just have to pull everything out. I can inflate this. The geometry is really smashed together. And then just smooth this out. So there's a lot of busted, messed up stuff to fix. And, I'm not even trying to do anything super complicated. The things you can do in shop modeling, you can let's say even if your forms look correct, you'll still like certain pipelines, certain movies will still have shot modeling just to kind of enhance the muscle. A big part of why we went with the stylized was, we knew that it was just going to be Miguel and I for most of the manpower. And if we were doing something really much more realistic, we would have to deal with anatomy. This is not ZBrush. This is Mush 3D. So it's a program specialized for shot modeling that can play animation, and ZBrush does not do that. It would be pretty amazing if it could. This is just a small kind of like independent software. So you can see here, this looks more correct. And you can imagine if this was supposed to be realistic, this would be much more work because it would be addressing like muscle tension and flexing and stuff. And in this case, at least what we have going on easier, it's very simplistic form. And I just want to maintain my form. Now I can see how the sculpt looks, right? I have the slider. And you can see when it hits this frame, it just doesn't look very good. So I can ease in and out. Right, so I'm easing out the blend. So basically, when I have my keyframe, my mic is kind of covering this. But my keyframe is all the way up. That's showing the full strength of this. And as I'm pulling this keyframe down, you can see it's just blending out. So this is pretty amazing software. Back in the old days, it sucked without this piece. So it's made this faster, but it could still take a really long time. You can see here, once it hits this frame, it doesn't really benefit me as much. So I'll just end up easing out of it. So I'll shut it off once it hits this pose. It's something like a walking animation where it's very simple. It will be really fast because the movements are kind of similar over and over, whereas the range of movement in this one is really broad. So I have this first frame corrected, and then as I scrub through, I can see it's not necessarily holding up anymore. So then I'll scrub to the next frame where things look broken. So maybe this one right here. And I'll create a new sculpt layer and just continue fixing it. And again, this is probably a full day of work for me because I have to get through the entire animation. And you can see it just takes time to even do this one shoulder. And I'm not doing a careful enough job, if I'm being honest. So it's just very time consuming. And there's things like this that I have to fix. So you have interpenetration. And that will just be another layer. So if I come here, I would rename this layer to shoulder right 02. This one will be shoulder right 03. Something like that. If I come up to the first frame, once I've sculpted this, it's being applied throughout the whole entire animation. If I don't want that, I want to put a keyframe at 0. And it just does that. So let's turn it off here. So now I have these frames corrected up to this point. And this is actually a really difficult one because the deformation is not consistent. The broken, it's popping a lot, right? And getting rid of pops is a nightmare. So the forms will swim. It's just like a roto. However, roto doesn't stick, it kind of swims around. And shot modeling is one of my least favorite things to do. And I'm doing it a lot on this project. which is normal. I came in knowing that. Like Miguel and I have done enough independent projects at this point that pretty much 90% of what you do is just intensive labor that sucks. Just manpower, fixing and correcting stuff. I have to do this to the beach scene. So the beach scene, what Miguel showed, doesn't have any cloth sim or shot correction. Most of that shot correction doesn't look so bad though. So you just, occasionally run into something like this. That scene where Koa kicks the door open, that one has a huge range of motion. That took a whole entire day to do, which sucks. Okay, so now I have this frame. And you can see when I scrub backwards, it does this, which is weird. So I just want to ease out of it. And if I check the animation, so far, it's better. But yeah, it's a lot of work. This frame is super broken. So this one's really tough because you can see this one looks all right in terms of the form shape. And the frame before it looks like this. So it's a lot of collapsing and stuff. So yeah. In any case, this is a normal situation for us to be in when you're in the indie project and you just don't have a ton of resources or manpower. You're going to have to fix or correct something somewhere. How's it going for you, Miguel? Everything crashed?
Yeah, my computer's dead.
Okay, so your computer just tanked.
Yeah.
This stuff is not really exciting. So I don't talk about it a lot, but this is what, and I haven't talked so much in the last few streams because basically the way our streams work is we talk about what we've been doing. And I've been doing a lot of this. And again, this is, each week that goes by, Miguel will edit his shots. He will, do all this work, move the story along, and then he will give me these broken alembics. And I'm basically spending most of my time doing this, and then a few things here and there with the environments and stuff like that. And yeah, once this is complete, I will actually export this alembic and I will submit in Marvelous, which I will start up. Give me 1 second. Oops. Your whole computer went down.
Yeah.
I can't even see your camera.
Yeah.
Miguel had a massive malfunction. Okay. In any case, we aren't using Marvelous. There are other options that you can use to sim, but this works. I know it well. It does a pretty amazing job. So what I'll do is I'll normally bring in the alembic. So let's just say I'll go into Maya. We still use Maya a lot. It's a huge part of the process. It just doesn't, Unreal just can't do certain things that Maya can do. And let me just try to do like a claw sim that's not insane. Well, or maybe we'll do one. Start. Okay, let's just do one where she's storming off. Okay. I'll bring it in, check the attributes. I'll usually pad my frames. So this one here starts at 520 to 608, and I usually will add just 10 frames before and after. I think this one's too complicated. Let me bring in a different alembic. Let's try. Sorry, I'm just kind of blanking off. Sitting shaman. Try this. No, that's cloth. Okay, let's look at this one. This is an aloe one. Let's pad the frame. And there's a lot of bugs to work with. So in Maya, the thing you have to be careful about when you bring in an alembic, you really want, you can see it's loading. So if you look at my screen, there's like this blue bar over here. You really want to let that load because you can actually export your alembic, and if you don't let this load properly, it will just glitch out and pop, meaning it will just damage your actual alembic file. So I'll take something in like this, and I'll grab the first keyframe. So this starts at 120. So this will be the start of my simulation, and I only need the body. And I'll export this as an OBJ. Let me just place it somewhere. I'll just call this demo. And I'll name the frame just so I know what frame it is. Let me load up the character. So I'll usually start with a file like this here. Okay, so that's my clothing. And this is directly imported into Unreal. The way I have it set up are all my UVs are actually completed in here, right? It's then brought into Substance to Texture and Paint. But the mesh doesn't change. So this is my mesh. And it's triangulated, which is fine. It doesn't really matter to me if it's quad or triangles. I will bring in the OBJ. And you can actually transition this. I'm going to import it just to see what it looks like, though. So let's bring in this pose. And I'm going to set this to add. If I open it, it will just override on top of it. Okay. So I can see here where she's sitting or where she's standing. And I need to get my clothing over there. What I've been doing recently, this is kind of a pain in this program. But you can't actually move everything together. So it's so manual. Give me 1 second. My gizmo is set to screen. But I need to get these closer to actually sim this over. And I can't actually move these together because I just can't. It won't allow me to do it in this program. So I'll do it like this, which is just painful. A lot of what I do is, I think, just horrible to look at and painful. But this is really the process. And I'm just working around the limitations. Now, I want to get her into this pose. And normally it will work better if they rotate the same way. If I actually just try to transition it from here to here, it will get messed up and the clothing won't look correct. So I'll just rotate this. And there's no snap rotation or anything like that. So it's just manual. What I'll do is just eyeball it. Try to get around 90. Grab the clothing and very painfully rotate the clothing on top of it. Collision is actually important. She has like underwear and all that stuff. So I'll sim it into place. Now, once I have this, I know that's in place. So I can delete that. I'm going to import the OBJ again, the same exact one. This time I'm going to set it as a morph target. And I'll set it to 99 frames. It will blend shape into that pose. But you can't do it from the origin point to that pose because it's too much of a stretch and the cloth will usually just fall apart. So now let's run it. And you can see it's blending. Yeah, there's no snapping. It's all just like this. But I feel like most of CG is always like this. There's always this misconception. It's like you just push a button and everything works. It's like it never works. Now let's let it continue simming. Once it stops, what will happen is the cloth will kind of snap back and you just want it to let it relax. You don't want this extra tension built up in it because once it starts moving, it's going to fight it because this is what the cloth actually wants to do. It actually wants to get into its shape. And it's slow. Let me just increase the particle distance. So what I'm doing is I'm just decreasing the resolution of the mesh. If you take a look, it was all triangulated. So originally it was at, I'll just do 8. So the lower this number is, the more tessellated it is, and the slower it is. So, you know, while I'm doing this, I can bring it to 12. It is changing the geometry, which doesn't really matter to me because ultimately what's really important to me is just that the UVs are the same, right? That way it's just looks the same, even if the tessellation is different. So it's kind of a strange way of working, but this has worked for us. Now, once I decrease the resolution, you can see the cloth is just relaxing, really nice. And if I want to, I can increase it. Once I have this, I want to import the Alembic. So let me just double check in Maya. I could bring in everything, like all these pieces. And it's fine. It will just be slower. You know, there's always limitations. So if I don't want it to run slow, I will just export only this one, right? The other thing I end up doing sometimes is I cut off the hands because the clothing will get stuck to it. It doesn't matter to me what the mesh looks like in here. All I need is the cloth. So I can basically destroy the mesh and export it. In the cases where the hand gets stuck, which is pretty often, what I mean is when the hands get stuck is literally when the skirt is flapping around. And if they're walking around fast enough, the skirt will just fly up and get caught in the fingers. And she would just walk around with the skirt stuck on her fingers. So what I've done a lot in those cases is I'll just go straight into the Alembic. And you know, I know this, none of this stuff is really exciting, but this is the reality. You can look at other videos that are more fun to look at and less painful. But this is the process of actually completing a shot. So let's just say I edit something like that. I cut off the hands. And again, I do this like 80% of the time. I will have to export this again. So let's say export selection to Alembic. I'll set my frame range, which is identical to this. And I'll export to selection. And I usually call this ala, like no hands. And I usually indicate the frame range in my file just so I have an idea. This will cache out, and it will only cache out the body. It will just ignore the hair because I only have the body selected. And normally during that process, I try not to touch anything because Maya can screw up when it's exporting. Once I have that, let me just save this in case everything goes to crap. Okay. Now I'm going to import Alembic. I set my frame range 24 frames per second. And you can see it's replaced it. There's no hands. But now this has the actual data. Now the other thing that I do, if you notice there's the clothing is hovering, there's this gap like this. So I don't want that. That comes from just a default setting, the skin offset here. So it's set to 3 millimeters. I usually set it to 0.5. You do want a little bit of something. Otherwise, the cloth can kind of interpenetrate. And you can see once I did that, it's now has a better contact point. It still has a slight small gap. I could set to 0, but it could cause problems like this. Some of the geometry underneath starts coming through. So we don't really get close enough for it to really be a thing. Then I'll jump over to animation. And you can see I have my animation like this. This is usually, I use animation setting. Before I actually submit, or actually record the animation, I will submit a little bit like this. So the reason why I do this is that there's just different settings. So the default one when you're working is set to normal. So when you're making your clothing and everything I was doing prior to that was that. Now that I actually want to do cloth simulation, I need to use animation stable. And sometimes it's just a different setting. And sometimes when you use that, it will bounce. So I will usually just press this button, let it relax. And you can see it's actually fidgeting. So it's just reading that setting. Once that's there and it's relaxed, I'm trying to turn it off. I will then hit record and just watch it simulate. And you can see what I mean. The hands could easily get caught. And her clothing fell down. So that happens. Let's go back. Let's delete this. I forgot to pin her clothing. So that's really common. Like with the father, his skirt falls down all the time. So we can actually pin these in place. So it's actually called tacking. Let's tack into avatar. And I want to tack the shoulder here. So it's actually selecting the cloth first. Do that again. It will select the cloth, and now it will select the skin. Okay, now that's tacked. And you actually have a length to the thread, and I usually set it to like 0.5 centimeter. Otherwise, it could be pulled into the actual mesh. Now, this one's kind of an area too that slips in a weird way. So I'll usually tack this because this can just pull all the way down, and that's not what I really want, like her clothing to fall off. So I'll usually tack this right above the areola and give this a little bit of distance length there. Okay, so now I have 2 pins. If I go over this option, I can see them. And this will be enough. The skirt doesn't really fall down. So that's because she has hips. The father doesn't have hips, so everything falls down off of him. And we can come back here, go to animation, and just resubmit. And usually I watch it to see if there's any errors. If it's a walk cycle like this, the simulation is not really difficult. Simulating on like bigger movements is usually a problem. Here, I do have this problem here. This piece of cloth is stuck inside. You can pull this out. The way I fix something like this is I just probably need a different setting for the actual cloth. So you can see here, this tassel is like stuck in here. If that becomes a problem, I'll start it again. Just delete it, go back to my simulation, and just reanalyze what type of cloth property this is. So this one here has this fabric assigned to it, and is set to silk. So silk will tend to do that. So I can create a new cloth property, and under preset, I can choose something thicker like leather. And I can select the pieces like this, hit this arrow, it will assign that. The colors don't mean anything texturally. What they just do for me is show me which cloth I have on it, right? So they're just color coding for me to understand what is being assigned. Now, once I assign a new property, you just want it to let it sim. And then you can see this is going inside. So I can fix this, pulling this out, and just catch everything first. This one will be probably a problem. Pull this out. And again, it's just very tedious. Yeah. But this is normal. One of the things is if, I do teach at Gnomon, and the comments I get really often for students, I teach and I help them, with their work, especially when they're stuck. One of their comments is like they realize how tedious and how meticulous you have to be and how very careful you have to work. And that is for every aspect of the job, whether you are animating or whatever. And I think this simulation is much better. You can see there's less interpenetration. Yeah, it's actually working out well. That arm just brushed up. It was okay. So this is probably not shot modeled because I think the arm is going inside the waist. So it's actually not exploding, which is amazing. I can then play this real time, which would be 24 frames per second, evaluate this. It's actually just sweeping it, okay. This is probably not the final one. So there's probably a version where I pulled the arm out because I don't really want that jitter. And I just don't want the arm to go inside the body because that's just not good at all for obvious reasons. But let's just say this is great. Once I'm happy with this, I just export this as an alembic. And the other thing that makes this really tedious is Unreal will not read this alembic directly from Marvelous for whatever reason. It just has an issue with it. It will fail to import an alembic directly from Marvelous into Unreal. So it has to go back into Maya and be re-export again so that Unreal can import it. So it's just a tedious thing. I don't think the cloth sim is so bad. I think shot modeling is the worst for me. So I'll bring it back in here, double check that there's UVs. And then normally at the last step here, I already have shader assignments inside of Unreal. And if on import, if I wanted to recognize it, I have to recreate my shaders, and I have 3 different shaders. The reason why is because there's opacity maps, and the virtual streaming or virtual textures have issues. Now my shading group will be called, Ala Clothing 1, and this is the exact name of the actual material inside of substance substance Unreal. And I would just color code these just so I can recognize what's what's being assigned. Now, when you want to actually assign this, you have to do it according to faces. So I'll select the faces according to my UVs, because that's how my shaders are assigned. Assign the material. Select this here. Assign that. And assign this. And then you have to assign the faces. It will not work if you actually set to assign objects. Once this is complete, I'll export selection. And then these are the settings. So UV right, make sure you have UVs. If you don't turn this on, you have no UVs and your textures don't work. Right faces is actually what gives it the material assignment. So that's why you have to assign faces. World space is just to make sure it shows up in the same exact place. Otherwise, when you import it into Unreal, it could just pop up incorrect, and then your body and all your clothing don't show up in the same place. And I use Agawa, and then this would just be exported. And this will be like the final cloth. And that is most of my hours lately, doing this and going back to environments, doing stuff. So anyway, sorry for today's stream. Miguel is missing because his computer has died, but you're still connected voice-wise, right?
Yeah.
So you guys can still hear him. But that's it. So this stream, these are live, and again, things go wrong. So
Yeah, that's it.
any last words?
We'll be back next week, and it won't be a disaster.
Yeah, we'll do better next week.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
All right. See you guys.
Chapa.